we have plenty of people though, so.
Right.
All right, 6:21. Let's open the finance committee on December, what, 13th?
14th.
14th, look at that. Time's flying by.
Yeah.
First is gonna be minutes. I'll have to get the meeting minutes to you for the town meeting.
Okay,
I did not get to that yet, so.
okay.
It was,
Short and sweet.
That's
it
right.
was open, close, but we'll get that. Or I'll get that for you. All right, so meeting minutes for September 25th is the first one.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of September 25th.
Is a second.
A second.
Okay, any discussion on that? Any questions, comments, corrections? We don't have anyone on the phone right now. No. Nothing? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Hey,
Okay. Next is meeting minutes from October. We have 4 meeting minutes to approve? Holy. October 5th.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of October 5th.
Have a second. Okay, open for discussion, comments, questions? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes from October 5th?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Meeting minutes from October 26th, 2023.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of October 26th.
Second.
Any conversation, questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes from October 26th, 2023?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry, that's fine. My phone works. And then the last one is going to be the meeting minutes from November 16th, 2023.
I'll make the motion that we accept them.
what, those were the
town
meeting minutes we don't have.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, that makes sense. Okay.
I was like, we don't have those.
Yeah, we'll put that on pause then. Okay. So the first business is the first quarter financial update. That'll be Austin, I'm assuming. Take it away.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time. So a couple of weeks ago, I think just before the Thanksgiving holiday, presented the Q1 financial report to the select board, and as promised, presenting to you tonight. So included in your packet is a slide deck and then some associated financials, both revenues and expenditures at a high level for quarter one of this year. Just gonna also share the slides that I presented. Just need to connect as well. Just one sec.
We did know Ted couldn't make it, right? We knew.
No, I didn't. I don't know, he didn't. Maybe he had somebody
Okay.
else.
All right, so this, I believe, is your first update from the finance committee. I don't know if there's kind of, this has been a process that has taken place before, but in an effort to just kind of keep everyone informed about how the organization is operating from a revenue and expense perspective, hoping to work on this format a little bit. I want to be as brief as possible, but also allow for questions and provide some additional detail where you see fit. So first slide just gives you an idea for revenue, where we are. Year over year, right around 21-22% as compared to FY '23. One of the things that obviously as our largest revenue is going to be property taxes, and 95% of our property taxes are residential. We're tracking fairly well. This number also does include uncollected property taxes from prior years that trickle in over the several months as well. We haven't, as of this report of 9/30, we hadn't received second quarter, payments of meals, or motor vehicle excise taxes, those as commitments are sent out, those trickle in as well. Meals tax are sent quarterly, and they're also a quarter behind. So what we receive would be for the final quarter of FY '23. So there's always going to be a delay there.
So the numbers you're talking about right now are the first quarter FY '24.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And the '23 ones, obviously, those are the ones went by last year.
Yep, and those are the actuals. It was
So,
a request
okay.
of the select
Yep.
board last year to say, at this same time last year,
Yep.
what did we look like? Obviously, things change with the economy. One of the things that I did break out for the purposes to be transparent, I wanted to show folks ambulance fees. Those are typically lumped into other charges for services. They're more than half of the charges for services budget overall, but because it is a it is a standalone department, the fire department, I wanted to show folks where we are from a year to date on ambulance.
That's good, yeah.
Doing fairly well. Obviously, ambulance is one of those challenging ones because we end up not collecting everything that we bill out. That's just the nature of the game, if you will. But from a revenue perspective, I think we're looking okay thus far. You'll notice just on investment income, 88%. One of the challenges with local receipts as we go through the tax recap process is, we had a fairly good year last year for local receipts. And you can't budget any higher than that, right? So you're kind of capped at prior year receipts. So we, I think, received just under $40,000 last year, creating a $40,000 budget. We will easily surpass that if we haven't already in quarter 2, quarter 3, and the rest of the year.
So I think this is right. So the FY '23 estimate and the FY '24, and that's for the entire year, not just for the quarter.
Right.
Correct. Yep, those are our budgets
Yep,
for the whole
okay.
year. Yep, so you will notice, if you look at the warrant from last year, we actually have a budget of 27 million. You'll notice our FY '24 estimate is 25 million. That's just because at the time when this was exported, they didn't include the $2 million in revenue on the tax levy, so I didn't wanna give you things that weren't included in the financial statements. Now that the tax recap process has been complete, you'll notice an updated tax levy number and an updated final bottom line budget number of 27 million.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Sure.
This, when you said it doesn't include the 2 million, that's the override, right?
Correct. Okay. Correct. Any other questions on revenue? It's not our largest one, but I just, there's obviously a lot of sub-accounts and local receipts. And if you think of local receipts, as you all know, those are, kind of closely tied to economic activity. So license and permits, those relate very closely to building permits, gas, plumbing permits, things like that. And then there's some things that, so for example, our pilot agreements, those are standard agreements that we have with, I believe those are all solar pilots. The next slide just kind of shows the same, it's not numbers, just showing trends over the past several years. But again, it's one of the, we're kind of in the same perspective. Local receipts is not necessarily our smallest, but not something that kind of makes the rest of the budget. Again, we rely heavily on our tax levy. Any general questions on revenue? All right, so from an expenditure standpoint, we are just around, if not a little bit higher than 25% for this year. These categories are very much summarized on the slides, but the attachment actually shows expenditures year to date by department for additional detail by department. But from the general government, public safety, public works, etc., we're tracking for most departments right around 25% for Q1. There's obviously some things that we pay upfront, so we pay our pension assessment upfront. There's some insurance that we pay upfront. We also have some expenses related to onboarding new employees. So, you know, we've done some, obviously drug testing for new DPW, recruitment expenditures for example, the new deputy chief, deputy fire chief, our police lieutenant, new HR coordinator. So any expenditures associated with that, whether that's business cards, pens, other associated expenditures. So some line items may, if from a detail perspective, from a line item perspective, they may be a little bit higher. But we're still tracking generally where we should be from the quarterly perspective.
So, quick question, so to make that 37% from like 25% or so, the pension payment and insurance is the biggest slug of that?
Pension's the largest, so if on it's gonna be the last page in your packet there, it kinda shows the detail by departments.
Oh, okay, all right.
So you'll see that pension is actually under a category we're calling undistributed expenses. And the pension assessment, our health insurance, transfer to unemployment trust, those are all within that kind of budget, if you will. And you'll
Okay.
see that that's at 40.
No, I was just curious, because I know that on fire, we always had our insurance bill we had to pay in July.
Yep.
And it was a big chunk.
Yeah.
And the rest of the year, I was kept getting questions, well, how come you spent that so much in the beginning? Why didn't you spread it out over the year? I said, well, you can't. You get the bill for insurance, it's for the whole year.
Yeah, and you know, especially with the pension, you get a little bit of a discount by paying
Right.
right at the beginning.
And we get the same thing with our corporate insurance, the municipal insurance.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah,
the liability.
Okay,
Yep.
no, that's fine.
You will notice our education for Wachusett Regional is slightly, I say very slightly lower than the 25%. You'll recall that the regional school district did reduce the 5 towns school assessments. Rutland's was approximately $50,000. They utilized excess and deficiency to offset the regional assessments, so slightly lower for Q1.
IT's at 33.96. Is there a reason why that's so much higher?
I don't know the detail on IT. I can get that for you. Actually, no, I know the answer to that. We pay also upfront our Viewpoint subscription. So the remaining should be just our monthly expenditures for CMPs.
So Viewpoint goes into IT, not under accounting.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, Viewpoint is for the permitting. Accounting is Vadar.
Vadar, that's right, sorry.
So there is a line item in the accounting budget for Vadar.
Thank you. Sorry, got them too mixed up there.
But, you know, it's a great point. I think from like a subscription, you know, it may be a wise idea to kind of merge all of our software subscriptions into one line item or one budget just for, you know, just maybe for,
6 and a half
Purposes.
dozen of another.
Never
You'd have to have like a dues and subscriptions line
Right.
somewhere, because truthfully, you put them all under IT, people are gonna be like, what?
Yeah.
Because some of it's fire, some of it's dispatch, some, so
Yeah.
keeping it, whatever.
certainly if we ever go to a point where we have like a full functioning IT department where it's probably their responsibility to manage that, maybe we'll get there, but
You wouldn't do that without an IT director for sure.
certainly not there yet. I did just on the last slide. This is a little bit of a different kind of display on where we are by the type of function. And I know it's small on this TV. It's a lot bigger than the Selectmen's meeting room. But this kind of shows these are the uniform Massachusetts accounting systems classifications of objects. So personal services are wages and salaries, purchase services, etc. So this is just a different way of kind of classifying the expenditures. It's still all adding up to the same amount roughly. The only thing we did exclude from this is the educational assessments, which typically are under the intergovernmental function. I just wanted to give you folks an idea where we are from a municipal spend for town government. And again, still right around, we're slightly higher for the reasons that we just kind of spoke of.
So this slide is a compilation of all these things under those categories?
Correct. Yep. Yep. And this will be, both formats will be presented in the budget document next month. So you'll be able to also see these from where we are from a budget presentation perspective, and also historical spend as well.
I kind of like that it's, you're showing the towns separately from the
Yeah.
schools.
Yeah, we could I mean, yeah, I think it helps for me too, just to see where we are. But certainly, obviously, from this previous slide, you have an idea on the educational. The good thing is about the educational is once you have an assessment, you know, it's just like a quarterly bill of that total assessment.
Oh, I see now. That number.
So that's obviously a very high level Q1 review. If there's any other questions or if there's additional detail you may be interested in, I can dive in for you.
Good information.
Alright. And so I waited to publish these online until after they were presented to you, so there is a new finance and budget section on the Newtown website. So it's rutlandma.gov/finance, and these quarterly reports and everything finance related will be posted on that website. Cool.
Good.
So that one.
And I believe the next one is you as well. And the next one. You might as well just keep going.
That's right. Alright. Let me just open up the other one. Alright. So this is the larger fold-out document that is the financial forecast.
Sita, you should be happy now.
I just can't see it in here.
And I'll just pull up the slide as well that I have.
This wasn't emailed to us, correct?
Yeah, no, it's in the package.
It was emailed, I didn't catch it, so that's the reason why I was asking, because I was like, wait a second, because,
It's small.
Yeah, I believe.
that's okay,
yeah.
that doesn't bother me, I can look at them small, so I got glasses.
And again, so there's slide decks as well that have some, and we can always, and I'll link to the actual proper document so you can zoom right in online if you're interested as well. So this, I know that I think during the override process last year, forecast was also presented, but I believe this may be one of the first forecasts you've seen from the finance department's perspective. So in an effort to kind of see where we are organizationally this year and looking into future years, this is a best practice to prepare a multi-year financial forecast and model. It's an important part of the overall budget development process. So you think about some of the things that we talk about policies, we talk about, capital planning is meeting next door right now. But a critical component is where are we now, where are we gonna be? And all of these documents will then be included into our annual budget document next month.
So to Tommy's point, this is really important to us,
Very important.
because I think just being able to look forward. Now, the only concern that I have is that in our face-to-face meetings with people in these rooms, there were questions about the 2.5 override. And how long will that 2.5 override last? What's it gonna do to support, the current, future kind of things? Now, I know that this is more intended to be just this is where I think we're going.
Yep.
But I would like to, and I don't know how we do this, Austin, I don't know how you would do this, throw another line or whatever, or maybe not, maybe it's not even relevant until we get there. But I'd like folks to know that we're at least looking at managing the overall bottom line, so that we're not going to be requesting overrides again in the immediate future. I mean, we can't do it, we can't not do it forever, but,
We could try.
well, we certainly would try.
It's long overdue.
But it probably won't.
It's long overdue, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's override, that's override, that's override, that's override.
Exactly.
Well, so let me just talk about some of the, so obviously with a financial planning model, you make a lot of assumptions.
Right.
Right, so, from a revenue perspective, some of the assumptions I've made, I'm trying to be as conservative as possible right now. Cause we have to be,
Right.
right, so, if you look at the, third line down, new growth, I have lowered it. So I have not accounted for Rutland Heights, for example. Why? Because when talking with our assessor's office, our building office, they're starting to build the model homes, but I have no idea if they've sold all of the properties yet. We have no idea when they'll be built, so I can't rely on those for next year or 26. Once we get some better information, we can adjust this model. But so we're being very conservative and lowered the new growth. We were already lower. We projected, if you recall from the FY24 budget, we were budgeting for $400,000 in new growth.
Yeah.
It actually came in at 313. So, we really need to be conservative on that front and just really hope for good news.
Well, plus you don't know up there if they're gonna build one house this year and sell it, or they're gonna build 20, so.
But the contract, as I recall, Mr. Sullivan wrote into it a liquidated damages that they have to have them all built out by a certain point,
Yeah,
correct?
correct.
I
don't
know
what the
that's what it, I
detail is,
know
though,
that,
but
I haven't read the whole
something,
thing, but
yeah.
I know there's something in there.
Yeah, but even that, like, God forbid, I'm
I,
just trying to be very conservative on this
listen,
front,
I agree with you wholeheartedly, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, yep,
Plan for the worst, hope for the best.
yeah, absolutely. And the good thing is, we know that, especially on that front, God forbid, if it happens to that project,
Right,
we know that that's coming at some point,
Yeah.
right? We just don't know when. So that's gonna be some really good news for us, especially on the tax levy side. And then all the other, all the building permits and other associated revenues that come in there. I have also level funded state aid. We look at some of the headlines, administration and finance, governor, they're talking about lower revenues than they're targeting, while it's year over year higher. They're missing their targets. The last time this happened, I think, was 2015, 2016. They had 9C cuts, which meant lower local aid, level funding local aid. So I'm, again, not projecting any increase. Hope for good news on that front. We'll obviously know what the governor's recommended budget is in early January, so we'll have an idea what state aid could possibly look like. We also slightly lowered local receipts or kept it level funded. Again, just a best practice, we can't unless we have significant documentation for it. We can't really budget higher for local receipts, just trying to keep those level or slightly lower to be conservative on that front. And then also as a best practice, based upon the consensus of this committee and the select board, I have removed the use of free cash just to give everyone an idea, if we don't spend any free cash, what's our bottom line? Because again, I think the use of free cash is more policy decision as a part of the budget process. So that's kind of the methodology behind the top section, which is revenue.
Well, that's a good way to do it, just,
Yeah.
obviously, we've been doing it because we have no other choice,
Right.
Yep,
but that's good.
All of us were in agreement, we never wanted to use it, but we had no choice.
yeah.
We have no choice.
Yeah, that's also including obviously ARPA. We used some ARPA in previous years as well. So if that's the will of this committee and the select board and ultimately town meeting, we'll put it in there. But for now, kind of that's where we are on the revenue side.
Okay, so Peter, going back, you said something about when the 2.5 override would end?
Well, no, okay,
No,
if
because
I
it
did,
won't.
I might have.
Okay, debt exclusion things would end at certain times.
Well, and that's true, and I could see that, but
saying
the
that we
2.5
saw the
override,
deficit.
we had a conversation. And somebody, I think it was Darren, asked, okay, so if we do get this thing passed, this 2.5 override, are you gonna come back next year and ask again for more money?
Oh.
And what they said was, in the example that Alex had put together, the model that he had put together, it would go out a couple of years, 2-3 years maybe, before we have to do that. And we sort of said that to the folks in the rooms, so.
Or before you ask for another one, maybe. Right, so hopefully we don't have to do that.
No, hopefully we get
right,
smart.
okay.
Hopefully the schools come back and they say we don't need this much money.
Right.
What's in that?
It's the good stuff.
So just getting over quickly to the expenditures, one of the challenging things that we're always gonna have are, some of our fixed costs, right? So talking with our health insurance carriers, they're saying budget around 12%. Pension, we're estimating between 8 and 10%, so I put in 10%. Our general insurance liability, I put in 15%. So those are just some of the things that, you know, immediately off the bat that are significantly higher than the Prop 2.5 plus new growth revenue that we have allowed.
Gives you an opportunity to be able to tweak it if you need to.
Absolutely. Yep, and hope for better news on that front.
Yep.
So, some of the methodology behind that, also, I included a 3% overall increase for municipal operations for the municipal budget. So far, the budget requests have come in slightly lower than that, which is some good news. But one of the challenges again are the two lower assessments that we have down below, right? So WRSD I have at, I'm being a little bit conservative on the 6%. Still, I think based off of, you know, just some, again, assumptions, let's say budgeting for a 4% overall budget increase for WRSD, we went up 14 students. It's certainly not 78 students, so that 6%, you know, may have to look more like 7%.
If we have a, if we're looking at new growth.
Yep.
Conservatively, where the hell do students come from?
New growth and changes in homes.
Yeah.
Well, you
Because,
could, yeah.
you know, you might sell your home and a family of 4 moves in.
So 0 kids to 4 kids.
Right, and there's no new growth associated with that
There's
unless
no-
they build an
right.
addition.
Oh, okay,
Right.
all right.
So that's the whole thing. It's you know, as people,
Right, and
you
there's
know,
some new,
you know, move up to Harmony Place and they move from their home with no kids to now having 1 kid, 6 kids, 12 kids.
So do we do anything statistically to try and assess that or understand that?
So, yeah, I'm working on some of the demographic data just for my own internal planning, but the school district just actually contracted with CMRPC, the Regional Planning Commission, to do also in partnership with the 5 towns a demographic and population study.
Okay.
Phase 1 will be the study, phase 2 will be recommendations based off of that analysis.
Okay.
So, just to warn the committee, those recommendations could be, we're gonna build a new school in Rutland, or we're recommending sharing schools with Holden, for example. So there's a couple of ideas that have been passed around, but they'll be using that data for something, as should we, right? So that'll give us also some good information about where we are from a population standpoint.
So
they're looking at building permits, they're looking at live births from the clerk's office, so vital records as well. So that'll give us some good data for our planning. But I'm also doing a little bit of that myself.
how many schools? We got 1, 2, 3 schools in town, right?
Yes.
3 schools. Is there any particular reason why, well, the plan would come out to us? I get a little frustrated when people start talking about, well, we need a new building, we need a brand new school, we need whatever it is. And I would like to know that somebody is going through and vetting that request with the kinds of analysis that says, this is what we need to do. Maybe this study is going to be it for the schools. But, you know, as Tommy was just saying, the debt exclusion, you know, we got buildings here that are just falling apart,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep.
And if they're meeting next door, how do we know they're not talking about stuff that's gonna say, you gotta be planning for more debt exclusions?
Well, certainly I think as a part of our capital improvement strategy, I think we should be looking at, so for example, if the school is saying, hey, we're gonna if we have some debt falling off on the high school, for example, we're gonna fill that with more high school improvements or, you know, other improvements to district-owned property. The town should also be doing the same thing, right? So if folks are very familiar with the level of debt service, if we fill that in and say, just as an example, we're going to renovate town hall,
Right.
or we're going to renovate the senior center.
Right.
That's a part of the capital process that we're also working through with CIPC, that they're actually formalizing the recommendations tonight. for various projects that have been requested by the town, so, and the school as well. So certainly we kind of managing our debt load. We do have some debt that's falling off for FY '25 budget planning, around $200,000 worth of debt service. So what that equates to in terms of the amount, obviously that varies, but there's certainly projects that I think we're looking at that could, you know, kind of fill that debt service level.
Right, but just looking at this, you don't have the Central Tree and Naquag's off of this list now in the last couple of years, last year or so. I only see Glenwood construction on here.
Yep. Yeah, so these,
So
this is excluded debt, right?
excluded that. So
Yeah, so, but we
Naquag,
also have, we have debt within the levy. So, and I don't remember the projects at the top of my head, but, you know, we've got I think it's, you know, almost $1 million, debt service budget within the levy that includes a lot of the projects, like I
but
think some of the
I
school
remember that we
renovations
had a
by
graph 2 or
Naquag, some
3
of the
years
schools.
ago that a bunch of that graph dropped down quite a bit over the last, or in this time frame. So
Yep.
just what you're saying.
Yeah, and we should be looking at, I mean, so for example, I think, from a planning standpoint, it may make sense to fill some debt service with, if we're saying, and I'm just gonna keep using the town hall as an example, if we're saying we really need to address town hall,
Well, we do. yeah.
you know, feasibility study and design we'll do a ban for a couple of years, for the feasibility study and design within the levy, present that to the town, and then because it's a larger borrowing, that'd be something you'd likely exclude to take it out of the levy. So get people, you know, get folks familiar with the practice of inside and outside the levy to make sure that, again, your buildings aren't falling apart and people, that require services from the town, they're doing so in a building that's not falling apart.
It'd be nice if they could do a complete assessment and recommend something, maybe not, that would not be a one-shot deal.
Yeah.
But would be a complete package.
So they did do some sort of a facility study. It certainly wasn't comprehensive.
No.
The challenge is when you want comprehensive, you're gonna spend a lot of money. So if you want all buildings, so just to give you an example, there was a town that did feasibility study and design for 3 fire stations and spent $3 million. $1 million a building for a fire station.
Just for the assessment?
Just for the feasibility study, so space needs analysis, feasibility study, and a design. Because the design obviously is where you're gonna get the true cost to present to town meeting. Cause that's also not a best practice to say, for example, we think it'll be 5 million, then you go through the design process, it's 15 million.
Yeah.
I think Hubbard's
We
did that.
never do that.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you mentioned previous studies, because I know I keep harping on this, but there are plans somewhere over there. There's been at least 2 studies with the town hall and office needs and space needs that have been done. And I'm not saying you gotta use those now, cause I'm sure the dates are gone by and this thing, but at least review them and get some basic ideas and information out of them, what was looked at and what
It's a
wasn't looked
starting
at.
point.
Yeah. Oh, actually, those have been great. I remember when I first started, I kept looking
Yeah.
at those. They was actually kind of cool.
I mean, we spent money on them, obviously, so.
Well, and at least it gave you an idea of what could be possible.
Right.
Right? And certainly there's some, I think, designs that would work very well with the space, and then there's others maybe not so much, but
Just
that
triple
would be a
the
good
cost.
starting point for, you know, if we were to work with an engineer and say, hey, this is what we've done a couple of years ago, build something
Right.
based off of
Right.
this particular sketch that we like.
Data to
So-
build on, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Right.
But, you know, I think the practice of getting people familiar with this and then showing them the results of the design so they can actually see what their investment is. But then there's also other capital, right? I mean, fire truck, the ladder truck is in need of replacement. 20-something
Police
years old.
cars, are we
We're leasing those.
leasing them?
Yep, and those are included in the
Okay.
budget.
Go ahead, ask how much the new fire truck is. Go ahead, ask.
Ask what?
Ask how much the new fire truck is.
How much is a brand new bike?
If you were to guess, what would you guess?
I don't know, 52,000.
Go ahead.
Double that,
Yeah.
2 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fire truck?
For a ladder truck, yeah. It's a little bigger, it's we currently have a 75 footer and the chief is asking for a 100 footer. for the reason of just building construction have changed and we need to be able to reach it from the road and things like that.
Well,
But yeah, $2
that's-
million.
That's practical.
Yeah.
But do we have a place to put it?
Yeah, it can fit,
Will
believe it or
it
not,
fit?
it will fit.
You have a garage.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah, we'll park it at your house.
Yeah, I got a new shed.
So in the capital process this year, and it certainly didn't include all needs from all departments, it was $40 million in capital needs. And I can imagine that there's a lot more than 40 million. But that also included the schools as well.
But now, I'm sure you've had the time to talk with the department heads. That facility study was kind of the managers in the different places putting their 2 cents worth in, not really somebody who, I mean, like, I can look here and go, yeah, we need a new rug. Yeah, that'll be about that, and move on, versus somebody who knows that this is, so many square feet, and it's gonna cost you this per square foot.
Yeah, yeah, the rough
Versus-
estimate can get you only so far, and then you've gotta
Right,
get,
right.
like, it'll give you a ballpark at
Right,
least.
right.
So we did, during the capital process, we did, obviously seek feedback for what their needs were and initial costs, and then we, said, all right, are you including prevailing wage, or are you including some other aspects of it that, we don't always think of that, hey, if you're gonna install a camera, it has to be installed at prevailing wage. Things simple like that you don't think about, but, yeah, so as a part of this expenditure, in future years, I did just put a line item, it's a small line item, in FY '26 for $100,000 out of the levy just for capital equipment. You'll recall, a couple weeks ago, we had a water heater that was in need of emergency replacement at Naquag, something like that.
They need hot water?
Unfortunately, yeah. That would be a line item to be able to utilize during the year for some flexibility for kind of those emergency or smaller capital requests. I hate to say, a water heater, a $40,000 water heater is not small.
So, in the document, you have the district. And it's showing an increase, and you said something about 6% is what your estimate is. It's conservative in your opinion.
Honestly, it's probably still too low. When I presented to the select board, I presented at 4.5. I slightly boosted it up to 6. Hoping that maybe it was not going to be 14 students, but
So how
We went down, a couple of years ago, we went down over 100 students.
right.
yeah.
Because the budget didn't go
Right.
down any.
Yeah, so up or down. Up
When they
means
go
we're
up,
gonna
we're
pay
gonna go up
more.
on our assessment, but
Right.
when it goes down, well, you gotta pay those bills.
Yeah,
Right.
and the challenge, obviously, as you all know, one of the largest parts of the assessment is the minimum local contribution, which is set by the state, and we have no control over.
Right.
And that's tied to a lot of different factors that aren't always easy to explain, but, obviously, that's one of the challenging parts.
Yeah,
of
but
it.
100 and something students time that minimum assessment is a chunk of change, but it never,
Yeah.
it never comes.
Yeah, but it's not just the minimum local contribution.
No, I know, I'm
It's
just,
that other piece, that operational assessment that we get.
it's both of them, is
The
right.
good news is with the new administration, she did promise
Yeah.
that she was gonna be a lot more transparent, so. Michelle's still there, right?
She is.
Okay.
God bless her, she
She
is.
didn't quit.
No, and she's done a great job. So, she closed out 3 fiscal years
Yeah.
in 18 months and resolved a lot of problems over there. And there was staff turnover that they had to manage as well, so they've done a really good job. And as a part of this process to talk about the budget, I know it's an agenda item later on for tonight. They are inviting both members of the finance committee and select board and town administration from all 5 communities to participate early on in this process to talk about the budget, so. Just on Bay Path, we did go up, so you'll recall we had a roughly $100,000 decrease last year, because we decreased, 10 students, we're up 13 students, so the budget, again, is up on that one. I just did a kind of a rough projection of 785 on that, so it's roughly a 20% increase.
They've
on
always
this.
done minimum local contribution, and that's it.
Yeah.
And they always give us plenty of years of heads up when they are gonna go up on something.
Yeah, yeah, and they were very early, as soon as I asked for, it was way before October 1. Or way before we received the October 1 official, they did kind of give us a heads up on where they are, which is good.
So is the district, I can't remember if they do it or not. Is the district doing a 5-year plan like this, a forecast?
I don't
know of?
I don't know if they have one yet. I'm not sure because I don't think their process publicly has started yet.
Right, okay.
So I don't know where they are on forecasting out.
Because when we talked,
Hope so.
when the superintendent came in, there was conversations around what are you doing to try and manage what the expenditures are? And the question that I asked him was, are you creating opportunities for efficiency? Doing things like consolidating purchases and doing things that might mean instead of having everybody ordering their own supplies and stuff, that's small, I mean, I understand that. But are they doing anything to do that? And he says, no, they're not doing it yet. Nobody wants to be able to give up their little fiefdoms. But a 5-year plan would start to show that. And it might generate questions.
I think they're working, so they've been working a lot of this year on, well, the facilities task force and the population study, but also I think one of their largest initiatives is their strategic plan. And while I haven't seen the document, or I haven't seen much information on it, I would hope and assume as a part of that process, strategic plan would be, making sure that they're on a good financial footing, hopefully. And if they think about some of the best practices to do so, it would be a forecast, it would be quarterly reporting, some of the things that we're hoping to do here locally.
Right.
If you think, they're the largest budget for all 5 towns,
Yeah.
they should hopefully do that as well.
And
So,
the district is one of the largest, it's the largest or second largest in the state.
yeah,
So,
so I mean, that's certainly, something hopefully that could come up at the budget meeting on the 29th of February is, asking, kind of what are we doing to inform all 5 towns? But that discussion hasn't come up, and we do have a monthly meeting with the superintendent, the 5 town administrators.
Good.
But we've mostly kind of been talking about some other operational things
Okay.
thus far.
So my only concern, and I know I brought this up at the select board, was the budget. You have a 3% increase, and you just did that, and you said that you included any contractual increases, but you put only COLAs and not steps for employees.
Correct.
So that was a very big concern because we all here in this room took a lot of hit on, why aren't you doing that? You have to do that, why, and we had to put special articles on for that. And the thing is we were going to try to include that so that we didn't have the large chunk that came out last year.
Yeah.
And so, and now already we're cutting it. So that's the concern I have, because we all said we were gonna do our best to try to include it, and even in the projections, it wasn't included. At least project the worst case, and then we make cuts, but with only 3%, that means that all of the non-union people are going to do, which I can say, I took a tremendous amount of flack for cutting people last year, because that's the only choice we have at that point. And already in preliminary, we're already cutting it.
Yeah, so I wouldn't call it a cut, because one of the things that coming in, I think looking at the way that we compensate employees, I have not seen a good rationale for how folks are classified, what the salaries or what the wages are compared to the marketplace. So my thought in talking with the department heads is, I think we need to work together from a staff perspective and the employee perspective overall, and obviously Select Board and Finance Committee, to come up with a wage schedule that makes sense for all employees, both on the OED side and on the MTP side. Because we have long-term employees that are classified lower than newer employees. We have positions that have greater responsibility that are classified lower than positions with much lower responsibility. So there's not a lot of logic or rationale that I've seen. And when recruiting new employees, I'm looking at what are the responsibilities, what do they compare in the marketplace, and I'm placing them along the the matrix. But again, with no wage study or no solid job descriptions that we have on file for anyone, I couldn't see moving forward in terms of future budgeting perspective with a wage schedule that I don't think makes sense. So my thought was, in working with the departments, let's at least budget for a COLA. We need to give them something. And working with the HR office to work with all town departments to, let's actually develop job descriptions, policies. And the largest part is gonna be, establishing a wage schedule that works for everyone and makes sense. So that's why the rationale was to keep, to not include, just to kind of freeze the steps as we are, because it's the goal to develop a new compensation matrix for all town employees. Obviously, that doesn't include the unions.
Right. So last year, I know when this was all done with Becky and Gary, I know I was told, and I believe it was said in a finance committee, that steps are supposed to be giving every year for the first 4 years of an employment. Is that true?
I think
It's
that,
just a stretch.
I don't know, I don't think there's a policy that speaks to that.
Okay.
Because we have a very small step scale. It's 4 or 5 steps. So you think after 4 years, you're maxed out. And if there's not a year where you get a COLA, you're frozen completely.
We've never had a year where there hasn't been a COLA.
No, but I'm just saying,
Yeah,
for example,
yeah,
right?
just so you know, there's never been a year.
So we either have to expand the steps or we move away from steps, right? I mean, there's a lot of towns that have kind of the mid-max range. It's a much longer, in terms of like the grades perspective. And then you rely on placing them along that mid-max.
Yep.
And then we hopefully maybe can be a little bit more generous with a COLA, for example. So we're always assuming that there's something, because that's also another challenge that we have with the steps is the average percent in between steps is 4.5%. 4.5% plus a 3% COLA, you're already beyond your 2.5 plus new growth.
I agree.
So that again is just something that I think
I just don't want, now, I know last year when that was all brought up, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of concern for them, making sure that we got people and we kept people and whatnot.
Yep.
And then we're not even 6 months in and now we're already projecting to take it away. I just don't want people who, some got up to their max and some didn't. And
Yeah.
now if we're gonna try to redo the whole wage scale, we're gonna really find out that it's totally unaffordable.
So
Well, yeah, I mean, so, and one of the things I actually forgot to mention with that as well is we're also, because, we don't have policies, we don't have a lot of practices, performance reviews.
yeah,
Before I got into local government, I worked for private government, and part of my raise was also tied to a successful performance review.
Yeah.
So we do have a draft policy right now that instituting the performance review process would get you some sort of a kind of a one-time financial incentive as
I
well.
want to say when Margaret was here, they did it for a year.
Just 1 year?
I think it was right before she left.
Okay.
I want to say, you'd have to go back and look, I think, because we instituted them, I remember we instituted them, because there were some individuals on town who had never gotten one, and they had been here,
Yeah.
30 years.
so what's the plan here for this stuff? I mean, this, as Karen was saying, this is going to be big, expensive. So what's the plan to be able to working towards? What's the goal? Is the goal to be the mid-max?
That's an example that I have.
No,
I mean,
I'm not saying that that's,
Yeah. But
that's the way we go, but
it may be something that makes sense for me. Just looking at, again, what some other towns are doing where, because, I also came from a town that had a lot of steps, and even then, because they successfully had a lot of long-term employees, a 15-year employee was upset because they were stepped out, right?
right.
So even that, when you expand the steps, there's gonna be, naturally a challenge that you have there. So you always have to, one of the things we always have to do is just look at compensation overall. Allow for people to be reclassified if they've increased their responsibilities. Or increased their hours, if they've increased their responsibilities, things like that. So, and then just constantly looking at their job descriptions. So the goal is, first we need to start with our policies. Because we've got 2 pages of policies, that's it. And there's a lot of things that are missing that need to be in there. So that's what we're working on right now. We've presented to the department heads, we're soliciting feedback, and we're hoping to get in front of the select board at the beginning of the calendar year. And then after that, and alongside that, is working with the departments on some sort of a kind of a salary study on their respective departments. Cause they're the subject matter experts, they're the ones that talk with the other police, fire chiefs, treasurer collectors to see where they are in the industry, so. But also we have some resources from some of the professional associations, like the Human Resources Association does a lot of comp studies on positions as well that we can utilize.
So, I mean, I know from my experience, it becomes people like to be able to do the job they're doing. They like to stay and get in the job that they're doing, and they like to be able to continue to get paid. And I understand that that's what they're looking to do, and COLAs are a way of being able to address. But once you feel personally you're doing more work, you're doing work valued more than what your COLA is, a lot of that becomes your responsibility as an employee to be able to make that change. If you're doing more and better work than somebody else, you need to look for that next job inside the organization that you're working with or outside. Make the move. And we should be, if we're going to do this, we should be working to encourage folks to be able to make that career move. And there are career opportunities, and, maybe not be in Rutland, maybe there's an opportunity at Holden that we could share and try and, just an idea of, I understand the personal issue, Pete and Karen's right. People get really upset.
Yeah.
People have worked here a long time. It's just not reasonable to expect that because you work here, you're always going to get a raise. Just as well.
I think there's a lot of things to, putting the money aside, there's some other arrangements that we can offer, whether it's in the form of some of our benefits package or just some other associated things within our policies, like hybrid or flexible work schedule to accommodate folks. The ability to convert some of their accrued time for some other accrued time, things like that we're trying to be creative and think out of the side of the box a little bit. Borrow a little bit what the private sector is doing to try to be a little bit more competitive.
Right.
We'll never be able to be completely what the private sector offers, but and then also one of the things that's important for me, and I really want to include in next year's budget, is opportunities for professional development. I think we do some of it, but we don't do a lot of it. And I think that there's a lot of employees that I think have a lot of potential to continue growing within their respective departments.
Right.
And investing in them makes them a better employee for us, but also to your point, if they want to move on, that's also not a bad thing for them to work with us.
Exactly.
Right.
They'll see things differently.
Yeah. And then come back, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. The only comment I wanted to make, trying to slide in between Peter.
Sure.
Now, it may not be applicable now in it, but just, you mentioned before about not having a program or a
Read matrix.
layout or whatever. But there have been 3 or 4 employment studies where job descriptions were done. The steps went from never any steps over here to a lot of steps, and then there were more steps, and they went back, and then this last time around, like you said, there's 4 steps. But that was the direction of the leading people that told the company that's what they wanted. That's why it went back to that.
Yeah.
So you're right. It probably doesn't fit the marketplace, whatever. But I'm just
I did see
was just
one
because there were studies done and there were job descriptions.
There were
done.
job descriptions, I
Yeah.
remember when they were
I
written.
did see one from, I think it was when Margaret was here, Jacobs, if that rings a bell, Jacobs Associates.
I remember she was the one that did an awful lot.
Yeah.
She wrote a lot of policies, she implemented a lot.
Yeah.
She was the one that spearheaded your position.
Yeah.
She was our first.
Yeah, no, and that's certainly helpful. And I did find some stuff that I thought was very helpful. One of the challenges, it's now 10 years old. So
I
there's a
agree.
lot of it that needs to be updated. There's positions in there that are completely eliminated or have been merged with others and things like that. So there's a lot that's.
There's lots
We
of
have to do
change
some
that
updates,
happens, right?
so, safe to say, the new HR coordinator is very busy with a lot of things. And policies are one of the biggest things that she's working on alongside everything else, so.
Very good.
So that's, so just, without carrying on much further, you can see with these conservative assumptions on both the revenue and expenditure side, the very bottom line is our overall net position. One of the challenges we have, right, is to answer your, the questions about, how long is that override gonna last?
Yes, sir.
That's always a very challenging
Looks like
question.
2 years.
Yeah, well, that's always a challenging question because, then you can respond with 6 or 7 questions to them. What are the schools gonna charge us? What's health insurance gonna look like?
Just say it looks
What's
like-
inflation gonna look like?
It's only 1 year.
Yeah.
It's only 1 year right now.
And that's if the schools don't do anything really
Oh, yeah,
significant.
it's this year.
Well, that's also if we don't use any free cash, if we,
Right.
if there's, if, new growth is actually going to be 300,000, right? So.
Right, but that's what a forecast is. A forecast is to be conservative.
Absolutely, yep.
That's what you're supposed to
And,
do.
yeah.
Because you could shoot for the moon and then we miss it and we go, whoops.
Better to be pleasantly surprised.
Right. So, if there's no other questions on the forecast, I know it was my intent to present some sort of an initial budget presentation tonight. In lieu of some of this information and some of the information that, we're getting from the state, I've asked the select board for a delay of either a meeting or two to be able to present that initial budget to both of you folks. I'd like to take a little bit more time to dig into some of these numbers. All the budgets have been submitted.
Okay.
And we've done initial budget reviews with all the departments on their needs and their requests, so putting that into the form of a budget document and putting that into a presentation for you folks is something that I'd like at least another, let's say, month or so, until we meet and discuss the budget, if that's okay with you.
Does the general direction fit within this forecast?
General direction of the, like, the timeline?
Total? No, the total dollar
Oh.
figures.
Yeah, our town budget does.
Just not the schools, what you're saying.
Yeah.
You won't get the schools
Yeah.
this early.
No, but like.
So I'd rather be
the
much
things
higher.
people are
I'd rather say it's 8% on the schools and
Sure,
figure out
sure.
how to balance that. and
No,
then
what I'm
they
saying
can-
is the operational increases that departments are asking for, is that total going to total your expenditures of, operating budget of 11,000,000,
Yeah.
$50,000? Or is that gonna come out to 13 million? So like, at the end of the day, you're asking for another month and I'm sure none of us are gonna argue with that, but is another month going to say, you're gonna come back and say this number is actually 1.5 million, school aside, we'll ignore the school, of course, because we know you don't know that, but, is that, what direction do you think this is heading?
So the request thus far for the town has come in at 2.89%.
You
So,
have 3-ish?
and I have 3 projected here.
Yeah. Okay.
Obviously, we need to look at, and try to figure out a little bit more in our conversations with the schools to see if we can at least get some sort of a better number.
Yeah.
Where they would be, digging a little bit more with some of our assumptions, now that we have the enrollment data for both of the schools. We can make some assumptions on that front as well. But at least on the town side, we are,
Slightly.
kind of below that projected 3% number.
Okay.
And I don't suspect those to be changed. I've had reviews with all the departments. I don't suspect those to go.
Yeah. There'll be some stuff, but it'll be minimal at most, yeah.
So timelines, how do you feel comfortable with trying to achieve a completed process that can go to the town meeting towards the beginning part of May?
Yeah, so,
The beginning part of May is when we have the meeting, sweetheart.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that by that time, we'll be done.
yeah, so I I was hoping to present in a preliminary budget in December. If we delay about a month, the process shifts about a month. So based off of the schedule that was sent at the beginning of this process, we were due to finish up right around March-ish upon all of your public hearings and reviews as well. If we could still stick to that timeline and condense the reviews a little bit, but in an effort to make sure that you all have your adequate time to be able to review and work with the departments and the board. Maybe the end of March, early April, I think is hopefully when we can finish, which
It's
again is
just-
still plenty of time.
It's just as we, and I understand the need to shift and move a little bit. I've never been in a situation dealing with budgets and stuff where shifting gave me more time. I was always on the other end where everything that was shifted came to, and you know this, you came to a point where it's drop dead. You
Hurry
have
up
to
and
do it.
wait.
Yeah,
No, so I built in presenting the budget in the budget book in the timeline, still giving you folks about a month to review the document itself, ask questions, meet with me with some follow-up, things like that. If you have meetings in the interim to talk about that, that's fine. And the process called for kind of the public hearings to occur in February-ish.
okay,
So those could still happen,
Yeah.
maybe late February, early March,
Okay.
possibly, but you'll still have, I think, plenty of time to be able to review this document, which includes all of the operating budget requests, capital requests. So it's, just to give you a reference, the capital section alone is about 70 pages.
okay,
The budget document will be much more than that.
right.
So there's a lot of information in there for each department for you to be able to go through, so that month, hopefully you can, as you're hanging around the house, you can.
Yeah, right.
read as much document.
We have another town meeting in end of February,
Oh, that's right.
Mid-February, February 15th,
That's what I-
16th.
16th. I just knew it was somewhere around there, so we've got some other,
Valentine's Day.
we got some more stuff
Yeah.
going on that week, so.
Yeah.
No, Alex, that's the.
And that's for the
14th.
bylaws.
Close.
Close.
So obviously there's a lot there, and here's the bylaw
You
man,
have kids, you know that sometimes the day has to shift.
and that will be held here
Okay.
in the Blair room.
Next door.
Yep. Yeah, in this room.
We can control things here.
Yeah.
So I don't have a question on this, but I have a comment. So I know Peter's happy with the forecast, as he's talked about it incessantly, but, which is good. I'm not saying it's bad, it's good. But
He means that as a compliment.
it looks to me like between looking at new growth and increase in taxes and what's being spent down here, we're in basically the same boat we've been for the last, I don't know, quite a few years.
Preliminary, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I will say, right, I mean,
Boat
those are
doesn't have any
also,
holes in it, but it's not getting any higher in the water either.
yeah, but again, those are still, those are,
You say no holes?
those are assuming, the heights
know.
never happens, right? So
Right,
there
right.
will be good things that happen, obviously our levy
Hopefully.
will go up.
Yep.
And.
Well, but in the end, when it gets to that point, he's going to have to go back and make some cuts, maybe.
Well, no, at some point, we're gonna have to do another override.
Right.
Yeah.
5 years from now, whoever's listening.
Yeah.
4 years from now. 3 years from now. Calm down.
Right.
2 years.
And that's what I've got. So again, this will be available online, but if you have any questions in the meantime, as you dig into it a little bit more, we'll have to share with you. And thank you for
Great
taking
job.
the time.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions, comments for Austin? No. Review of proposed finance committee bylaws. Peter, I'm assuming that's why you sat down here.
That is correct. Wow, that's not a great, but this is the current bylaw. And I only brought it up because we discovered a problem at this past Tuesday's meeting,
Okay.
which is section 1B. No elected or appointed town officer or town employee shall be eligible to serve on the committee. That means that none of you are eligible to serve.
All right, see you.
Because the
Yeah,
instant
I'm
you're
gone.
appointed,
Yeah. See you tomorrow.
so, at our last meeting, we changed the equivalent sentence to be the one you see here. No finance committee member shall act as a town official in any other capacity. A town official includes The definition of town official includes every employee, every board and committee, every person who, anybody, if you're involved in the town in any official capacity, you're a town official. So this change says you can only be a town official on this board when you're a board, which carries forward, I believe, the intent of the original. There have been a lot of definitional changes since the original FinCom bylaw was written, so I think we're just catching up to that right now.
So you said no other committee?
Yeah, we're not allowed to sit on any other committee because
Correct.
we're supposed to be impartial.
Although sometimes there's committees appointed that have a member of the finance committee, a member of the select member, blah, 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 to do things.
Subcommittees.
Yeah, but it's not,
I'm not saying it happens
Yeah.
frequently, but it does happen.
that's the
Right, serving
exception.
as a sub-
It's like, I can't sit on the committee for the 300th. I can't sit on, the open space committee. I can't sit on the master plan, all those kinds of things, because we're supposed to be impartial.
Correct.
I could see some of those, but I would think that like some sort of event committee would not be a big, like a 300th would not be a big deal.
They
'cause
won't
it's-
let you.
No, but shouldn't be, I agree with
I
it
called
not
the
being on
state.
there, but I think sometimes when there's a building committee or a building whatever, there's been representative on there, so.
Right.
I mean, maybe it could say, excluding assigned subcommittees or something of that nature.
Do we have to get that technical?
Well, that's what we're doing here, is we're getting awful
Well,
technical.
it's painting a very strict picture, and Tommy's coming up with a point of contention that could arise.
But truly,
and
you're not, if you're appointed to, if you're, like, for instance,
you're still a member of the
you're
finance.
still a member of the
committee.
finance committee, you're representing the finance committee
think you're
on
right,
that
yeah.
board.
That's
So I
fine,
think
yeah.
that's where the comes in, because,
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Well, I guess what I don't want is we've had this, we've been going back and forth on these bylaw changes for quite a while, and it's getting very technical, and
Yep.
I don't want, like, 6 months from now, somebody says, well, you can't do that, because that's the way I read it, that's not the way you read it at the time, and somebody else reads it, right?
It's our interpretation.
But
It's
you're 100% correct. You're representing the finance committee
Yeah,
on
I
the
agree
subcommittee.
with that 100%.
So we need to have a change in there, or does that do it this, Peter?
No, that's. I
guess that's the question.
Right, so I guess the answer to the core question of can you serve on another committee, the answer is you can as long as you're not a voting member. Because there you're not taking an action on another committee.
As a represent,
If you're representing FinCom as a non-voting member, it can't be ex officio because it's not outside the authority, you're acting as a member of FinCom.
Right.
But if you're a non-voting member of the committee, that would be okay because you're not acting. You're not, non-voting means you're
So
allowed to
it's-
speak.
It's purely
Helpful.
as a consultant
Yes.
Or as a
from the
like.
finance committee. Okay.
That's kind of what I was thinking on like an events committee. If you're just there to like help out and do things,
Right.
like that's different
Right.
than if you're voting. I
Right.
would think.
Right.
I'm just telling you what I was told by the State Ethics Commission when I was asked.
But you're not really a member of the committee if
I
you're
called the State Ethics Commission and
Right,
told
and-
you, sit on the finance committee, you're not allowed to sit on any other committee.
right,
As a voting member.
right.
Sit on any other committee.
But how
That's
do
what
you
they told
sit? How do you sit? It's sort of like as a citizen, a finance committee member, but as a citizen, I could go to another committee meeting.
Sure.
And I can sit there.
Sure.
And I can express my opinion.
That is correct.
And that's really what we're talking about, is what we would be doing.
I think this is fine. I don't think anyone
think
has an
it's-
issue with this.
no.
Okay.
Because it's always been that way.
Exactly.
But,
Well, actually, it said we can't sit on this committee.
yeah,
Hasn't always been that way.
That's right.
no, that's never been.
That's
That's
right.
you.
I don't see one.
Austin, you have to go through all finance committee meetings for the last like 15, 20 years since these were written and ixnay them all, redo everything.
1941.
There you go.
1941.
Good luck.
Wow.
budgets.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the
That's right, they're all invalid.
Well, the budgets were all approved by the town anyway, so those are fine. It's just the meeting minutes you kind of have to go through and make sure that there was no corruption or
The what meetings, they didn't occur.
That's right.
Valid.
There's a bunch of people.
seems like a bigger problem.
So, other elements about membership that have changed, was main changes that that were discussed at the joint meeting. And they're not in section 2 because select board ratification is the same, but when we come, so there used to be the annual appointment at town meeting. And then there was, you folks fill your own seat
Afterwards.
afterwards.
On a vacancy, yeah.
On a vacancy. So what's changed now is that all appointments, with a small asterisk that we'll get to, are by the moderator and ratified by the select board. It doesn't matter what the nature of it is, what the nature of the vacancy is, but they all go through that way. And the fun part is where we hacked in 3B. The committee shall fill any vacancies in its membership by majority vote when the moderator is unavailable or otherwise unable to appoint members. So this is the backstop, where if, I'm just gonna say Randy's name, he's been the moderator for a long time. If the moderator is not available, or Randy's not available, or can't appoint someone for any reason, he's off on vacation, he's in the hospital, he's whatever the condition is, that you folks, by your own vote, can appoint a member,
Which is the way it's always been.
which is the way it has been.
Subject to ratification.
Be validated by the.
That's correct. The select board
Right.
is
Okay.
still involved in the ratification, and it's got the same constraints as all the moderator appointments. They have to do within a certain amount of time. If they don't vote, then it's constructively approved.
Okay,
Okay, so that's number 1, 3B1, right?
Yes.
So that, shouldn't that line say 2A1 in accordance with 2A1, not 3A1?
Hold on. 3A1. Oh, that needs to be 3A2. Yeah, that changed.
No, 2A,
3,
2, oh, I'm sorry.
it's section 3, which is
Section-
members.
Oh, we're in, okay,
A.
A is there.
Yeah, and so that has to be 3A2.
Two.
Yes.
No, I was reading, I was skipping myself.
Because we may have reordered numbers, and we weren't
Right,
careful enough
all right,
on
so that
this.
should be 2 there then.
Yes, 3A2.
Do you dream about this?
I don't think it's a dream. I
I'm
think
dreaming of the time I don't have to deal with
Yeah.
this anymore.
Okay, so I have another question right
Yes.
while we're right there. So go back to 3A3A. The line before that one, 2 lines before, it says such appointment shall expire when the previous member's term will have ended. So that, if the term was 3 years and they vacated the seat in 1 year, that this person's gonna be on for 2 years, as opposed to, it used to be until the following May.
Right, and the thinking is, since it's still going through ratification, there's no need to go through the reappointment process right after the next town meeting.
Does make sense. It's the logic.
Because there's a process in place, people know what it is, so
Yeah, it's not like it's a
the end of the
temporary
term,
member.
I think it makes sense to carry over the same term end.
Oh, well, okay, I can see that, but so I guess one of my questions is, what is the purpose of, I know it's been in there ever since the original one has been around, but the ratification process amounts to what?
A vote by the select board.
No, I understand
Okay,
that,
sorry.
but I'm saying, it's a point where if the selectmen don't like somebody that the moderator appointed, then they can do something about it.
They do effectively have a
Because they don't
veto.
like what he did.
Right.
And the whole idea of this is supposed to be a separate committee from, so it's a check and balance with what's going on. But,
There was
I
opposition
just
to
don't think
that
there
when
should
we
be.
met with the select board from our entire group, yes. We all kind of opposed that. I don't know that. I guess.
that Senate, that,
Correct.
yeah. But they didn't, they left it in there.
Correct.
Okay.
We all did oppose that.
You don't understand what I'm saying? We're supposed to be
right.
Yep.
No, you're right.
so,
As much as we would like to see it,
I mean, again, the initial appointments the annual appointments are also, have always been subject to ratification by the
Correct.
select board, so.
Right.
This just makes the process the same for all of them.
Right. So are we
But
done
if you
now
don't like
with the-
that, whether it's the same or not, I mean, you're changing other things in here that have been in this way for ages that somebody doesn't like, because they're changing them, so I don't think those two things should be in there, that's my
You
own
know what you
personal
can
opinion.
do at the town meeting when this
Correct.
goes to get voted, you say that and you say you think that should be changed for a-
Absolutely.
Have it in writing and we can
If
hand it to
we're
the
all in
town.
favor of
Have it
that,
in writing, propose a floor amendment, that is always an option.
So,
We have been doing this, the ad hoc bylaw committee, been doing this for long enough, we want to be done. And so we are not proposing for an instant that this body is perfect or ideal and is going to meet any needs 2 years from now. That's the purpose,
Like there are changes, as we've
say,
seen.
for example.
so are we done? Is the finance committee section done now? Is it
I
going
believe so.
to, the town meeting in February?
It's going to legal review next week.
Okay, good.
The entire body of bylaws is going to legal review next week.
How long do you think that meeting's gonna be in February? Should I pack a lunch?
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
It'll be really short or really
Okay,
long.
okay.
I don't see a lot
or
of,
somewhere in the middle.
Between.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of in between, because people are either gonna pick it apart and wanna put on 100,000 little amendments, or they're gonna say, it'll do for now, we'll
Yeah.
accept it and move forward, and the permanent bylaw committee can address the real deficiencies,
You said
and the charter
February
committee for
16th? I have a
that
dentist
matter.
appointment on February 16th.
That's right.
Sometime in the afternoon.
After 6, probably, right?
Oh, shit.
That's a
That's a tough
the
sell.
charter committee, what charter committee?
Well, the select board has not appointed a bylaw committee, permanent sitting bylaw committee, and they haven't, and they've discussed repeatedly a charter committee, but they haven't formed it yet, so.
Well, so there isn't one yet, okay.
No,
That's
not
a
yet.
future thought.
I expect there to be one. I expect that there would,
That has to go to
that the town
so.
really needs a charter for actually good reasons.
Any other changes that?
Well, I don't know, we going through the rest of this, or?
Feel free, I think those are the biggest
We can
changes.
go through this at, select, if you'd like to
No,
make
no,
any.
if you're happy with it, then that's fine. So all the other stuff is basically what we.
happy is a relative
This one
term.
goes back, obviously probably a year and a half ago, we made some changes, but it's still, the rest of it's basically the same?
Should be basically the
Okay.
same, yes.
Okay,
No, it's not the same, Tommy, don't let him fool you.
oh,
Well,
If the town administrator, like in the past 3 years, doesn't provide us with a balanced budget, it's no longer our job to do it, it's the select board's job to do it. So I know my concern is, why now do we have to remain impartial when it's not our job anymore to do that? So why is this any different than the events committee, the 4th of July committee, the open space committee and all of them? Why now? I understood when we were responsible for handing in a budget, but that has now been removed from us. It's now in the selectmen's hands. Why do we have to remain impartial? It should make a hill's beans worth of difference, because truthfully, we have members right now on the select board who are going to be making decisions that will affect their financial and family members' financial.
I,
Well,
they're actually at the god-awful 9-hour meeting between the select board and the bylaw committee last Saturday. Membership was a discussion of both FinCom and CIPC. And there was lengthy discussion that ended up with no changes because there was no consensus on how to change anything. So until there's time, I don't disagree with you, Karen, I'm saying that until there's time for people to think it through, that this committee would not propose anything different for those two committees.
You don't necessarily have to propose it.
Fair enough.
One of the things I would offer in lieu of that is, if you were to remove this, you are always covered from an ethics law perspective. You should always recuse yourself from things that, even if you don't have a direct financial interest, if it seems that there's, if you're advocating for the let's just say you're a member of the events committee. And you're advocating in the budget, and you're also a finance committee member, you're advocating that the events committee get $1 million budget. That's probably unethical, even though you're not having a direct financial.
And I understand
Yeah,
that, but that,
so you should probably recuse yourself from that line item, like, actually, there's an advisory that says if you have a conflict of interest, whether it's for adopting a budget line item, signing a warrant, things like that, you recuse yourself.
yes, fully aware.
So
But
that's,
it's always been that the finance committee cannot sit on any other committee to keep them impartial.
yeah, to be honest, I was surprised to see that line item when I joined the town. Because, you know, as kind of the discussion earlier about a committee member's ability to contribute as an active member, on some things that have no financial impact.
Yeah, but that's how it's always
You know,
been here.
yeah.
And it's always been brought up because I wanted to sit on a couple of, you know, fun things in town. And I can't sit because,
So
But
now
the
you
Economic
can.
Development Committee.
But by the same
No, I
token,
cannot.
If
Still
ethics,
can't.
if the ethics commission tells you can't, then we can't write
it's
something in bylaw.
because of the way the bylaw was.
Oh, because of this
I
only?
sent him the bylaw. Oh,
okay.
yeah,
All
don't
right.
worry. I covered all my
My
bases.
mistake, I thought there was something in MGL that would.
No, I sent that in and I said, here's the bylaw, this is how I'm reading this, is this correct? And they told me that that is correct.
But we have a lot of fun committees that I think a lot of you could be great contributors to, but obviously because of this, you can't. You know? And there's some things that cost virtually nothing, like, well, the US committee is not a good example, that's a fun committee.
No, but that is a good example because even though it has financial aspects to it, it's not you're not being partial when you're trying to say like, you know, we should budget X towards it. It's more about you're trying to come up with a realistic aspect and you're trying to help the town. It's not, it's,
Yeah. Economic Development Committee, like, you know, if you have
that was the
any
one I was
interest
thinking of too, yeah.
in, you know, pursuing economic development interest, I mean, it doesn't have a budget line item, and it's more kind of advocacy that, you know, doesn't necessarily have a financial impact, nor budget related impact.
Which again, you could go to that committee and just not vote.
Right,
Or as a resident, as you mentioned earlier, right?
exactly.
But it's no different than when we all sat with the select board and voiced our concerns and it went, so, that's the thing. I mean, if you're gonna sit and be when you're a member, you have more
Yeah, push.
push, you have more abilities than just sitting in.
I mean, I will say that, like, you know, our input on the budget is not nothing. We still have an input as far as the town respecting our knowledge and input towards the budget and us saying that. So if we thought that at any point select board, I almost said Senate committee. No, where that came from. Select board was putting things impartial and they were doing things that were unethical. We could say that at town floor and hopefully the town would listen to us and vote accordingly. So, I mean, just because we're not creating the budget doesn't mean we don't have power over the budget.
So our report is always going to be whether or not we want to recommend or not, so.
So hopefully it holds the weight. And if we see anything in the budget that we don't believe in, we would hopefully
Right,
suggest that way.
right.
So,
You can swing it that way if you want. I just see it another way.
as I said, I'm
I
not
expect much
suggesting,
different with Austin being in the position, but for the last 3 years, this committee watched the tapes. Did
So we
the
just
lion's share of the
gotta,
work.
we just gotta get an ankle bracelet for
Yeah,
it. Keep
well,
moving.
so one of the things I think that is critical for finance or advisory committees, whatever you wanna call them in towns, is what you brought to one of the first meetings that I attended as town administrator was the actual report to town meeting. I think that's a great use of coming together as a finance committee to say, where are we from our long-term OPEB pension assessments? How does the current proposed budget impact our long-term obligations? And reporting that, hopefully in written form, including in the warrant, and presenting that to town meeting. When I was on the selectmen in Winchendon, quite literally the finance committee chair, sorry Alex, had a 10-minute slide. And they were talking about, you know, there was a written report, but then there was also a 10-minute presentation that they had talking to the townspeople at town meeting about finance.
Don't you dare.
Well, no, but it was a great practice,
I
cause
can talk.
it showed people,
10
we
minutes.
can point to our
Town
budget.
meeting.
Yeah, that's a lot,
Yeah.
an hour.
An hour.
I could do that.
Because they've got the budget document, they have the recommendations in the warrant, but then they also have the committee to be able to, speak to some of the questions about the long-term financial situation as well, so.
If I were to talk for half an hour, most of the people would leave and then there wouldn't be any contention.
What are you gonna improve? You're all good.
That's true.
Yeah, that may be a good idea.
I could
Strategy.
talk for the hour
But
and
the
make sure
report
everybody
is,
gets
I
it.
think one of the favorite things that I like to see in, like, I'm a nerd, so I look at a lot of cities and towns warrants and budgets and stuff, and one of the first things you look at is their finance committee's report. Cause it's essentially, that's the legislative body,
No, you read
finance
the
committee.
notes to the financials.
Well, that's the audit, right? Yeah, so.
That's how you find out what's going on in the towns, and
Yeah,
it's
well,
the
no,
financials.
no, but it's also like, what do the townspeople think about, like, the capital assets? And what is the committee that's representing the legislative body, what are the recommendations to that? Because probably no one at town meeting, other than like a couple of you, or maybe a handful of you, care about those notes. But they do care about what's the condition of town hall, what are you gonna do about the senior center? What's the recreation department budget gonna look like, right? And that report can do a lot of, fill in a lot of information on the questions that people have, so. And I'd be happy to work with you guys on that too, cause I have some ideas for ways to inform people in that respect.
Very good.
That's what I got.
Any other questions about the bylaws, comments, concerns?
Nope.
Okie dokie dokie. Last official item on the agenda
very much.
thank you, Peter.
It was easy.
Is the Wachusett Regional School District 2025 fiscal year budget meeting. We need to choose a member. Is it a single member?
One member, yeah.
One member. Whew, one lucky feller.
Well, this is fella. Yeah, it seems like, so,
I meant that in both.
yes.
Yeah, in generality.
So
It's definitely a
this
general.
is a member of the finance committee and a member of the,
Select
board. Yep.
But we're only choosing the finance.
you're right,
committee.
no, I understand that. because-
Actually, we should just choose both.
So it'll be myself, select board member, I believe they've appointed the chair, and then whoever you folks appoint to attend that meeting.
Okay.
Does
But
any,
it's an open meeting, so any of us can.
Correct, right, we can
Yeah,
also.
absolutely. Absolutely.
We've done that.
Who wants to go?
Yep.
does anyone want to go, specifically want to go in representing the finance committee?
Oh, I'll go.
You want to
There
go?
we go.
Yeah, she gets to sit at the table.
Awesome. So moved.
Anyone else want to go? Let me just make sure that there's no contention there.
No.
Okay.
I know, sucker.
No, it wasn't even that.
I know she did.
Oh, no. She couldn't make an S with her finger, so.
There you go.
Some good news from the school, I don't know if you're interested, if you watch the school committee meetings. At their most recent meeting, they opted to begin the process of becoming a green regional school. So as you know, we're a green community, which allows us to.
All that means is book costs go up.
Well,
That's all that
no,
means.
it's good. It's actually grant money for the town. Right now, so we're a green community, so that means like all the LEDs, things like that are paid for from grant funds that we receive from the state.
We're eligible for those grants.
Yeah, if we apply, we have to apply.
Eligible for the grant.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but so
No,
we have
no,
a
I agree.
consultant that does
Yeah.
it for us. We've gotten several $100,000 for town buildings.
Yep.
One of our largest users are school buildings, and because the district itself has not entered the program, we are prohibited from applying on behalf of the schools. So if we wanna do boiler replacements, heating improvements, LEDs improvements to the school buildings, we can't until they've finished this process. So I've been pushing the superintendent to do something, and the town of Princeton has as well, and they actually sent this to the policy subcommittee to continue and start this process, so.
How long do you
that's-
think that process will take?
I don't know, you know the schools better than me. So in
It's a
terms
new,
of,
It's the school committee that's gotta do
Oh.
it. It's not the superintendent, it's the school committee.
And all,
never mind.
and all we have to do is adopt the policy, and quite literally, the policy is a hybrid or fuel-efficient vehicle policy, which we've had on the books for years now, I think. They only have 2 district vehicles, and they're already fuel efficient, so it really doesn't have a long-term financial impact for them. So it's like a no-brainer for them, because all of their, if they adopt it district-wide, all of their buildings could receive grant funding, for improvements.
Which would help.
So, that'd be huge, so, just so you know, from a.
Good news.
Okay, any other discussion that is not reasonably anticipated within 48 hours of the meeting?
Oh,
No,
yeah, sorry.
I only have something to just give you
Yeah.
that I did this, what, 2 or 3 meetings?
So you told me you were gonna email it to me.
And I did?
Yeah, you did.
Don't start.
I'll email it to you.
No, this is fine, no, this is
Gonna go home
fine.
and email it to you.
I'm just saying I didn't forget about it, you told me you were gonna email me the list,
Okay,
that's
so
all I'm saying,
some
I'm
of the
saying
things
I
we
was
start-
not
well,
ignoring
I
you.
finally found my notes so I could write it up. So anyways,
Thank
that's
you.
it. When we can talk about these, we can talk about them.
Yeah, we'll add them to the next,
Okay,
I didn't wanna add them to this agenda because it was
I
already very long.
understand.
Thank you, sir.
Owns it.
I don't wanna give you my copy.
We've already sat, here, I got one for her.
Oh,
Hey, Tommy, if you look at Donna's expense, she's got all the articles listed.
No, that's okay, but I'm saying.
No, I get it.
And he's
But I
always-
happened to really pay attention the last couple of times, and I'm like, it's perfect. She's
I
got
got
everything.
another
started.
one
I got- you know,
yesterday.
we've already
so-
I know,
started the
I
budget,
got,
which I-
that's the one I looked at, but it's got all of them on there, so you know.
Some of these, we're actually, it's a goal, there's a select board goal to get an update on all open articles and ARPA projects.
But these are all for discussion within the finance committee, so they don't need to be answered right now,
Right.
it's,
No,
we're
just
I
so you
gonna
know,
talk about
some of
all
this we're
this.
all
But I
going.
I
just
wanted
figured
this
I'd
to be
teach
so
him.
we could get on an agenda, then we can, as a group, can talk about it,
Yep.
whether we wanna do them, we don't wanna do them, that's all.
Makes sense.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
And we are getting paper copies already, so that's a good thing.
did you print those yourself?
I did. I knew which button to push. Can you imagine?
I don't know what button to press. I asked my wife to print some for me.
Siri, print.
You do not, do you?
Siri just opened up, by the way, so thanks. I do, yes, cause I hate printing things.
You better keep her, because you're not gonna find somebody to do that.
I just wouldn't print anything. It's really just Amazon returns that you print. You would want to.
You'll have an email shortly when I get home.
About to do it myself.
Motion
Darren.
to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's why.